All right, y'all. We are on a trip. We're going over to Goritza to tell you the story about the Apostle Jason and Sosipater. Thank you so much, sir. So we're headed down here past the bay. It's actually to me, it's still in the same city of Corfu. So basically, I'm going south down the coast here. Here's where it gets exciting, right? So Paul, he meets Apostle Jason and Sosipater. He meets him in Thessaloniki, and apparently he was actually working there. That's where he was doing some of his sewing. This is mentioned in Romans 16:21. Apostle Paul, he calls these people his kinsmen. So they were likely his friends, not really his family, but they also mention in Acts 17 where Jason was housing all these people, including Timothy and Silas, and he eventually got fined by the authorities. So they fined him for housing criminals. He was housing Apostle Paul, and we can't have that. So they were fleeing inland, and they were going uphill to avoid persecution, but they ended up eventually having to flee to this island. We're here on Corfu, and they started a church, and we're about to walk up to that now. So let's get over there and check it out. So the place we're going to is right over the hill yonder. You can see this is a very active bay right here. Pretty exciting. So when they got here, they immediately started preaching, and that pissed off the king because essentially they were telling the citizens that the king is not their God, that there's someone higher than him. So this pissed off the king, and he eventually put them in jail. Once they got to jail, they were actually preaching to prisoners and guards alike. They say that 7 prisoners converted to Christianity pretty quick, and they were persecuted themselves. Then a guard, he converted as well, and all of these people were killed for their faith. However, what this did was cause the king's own daughter, Kirkira, to, be inspired and to just be moved into becoming a Christian as well. She sold all of her jewels and jewelry and gave the money to the poor. This infuriated the king Kirkilius even more, and he even started persecuting his own daughter. So we're actually right here inside the church now, and there's a lot of exciting things going on here. Check this out. Here we see there is a candle burning. It was still burning yesterday when I was by here. Maybe this thing's been burning for 1,000 years. They say both the apostles are buried here somewhere, and there's artifacts left by them, but it's a very exciting place here. Now also, you have these older pieces. So the church has been destroyed so many times, but there's pieces that have remained. Now it looks like this was purposely, someone just hit it with all this, like a hammer or something, so that's pretty crazy there. Excuse me, man. Do you know where are they buried here? Are the apostles, are they buried here? No? No, okay, thank you. She just lit the place up for me. Check this out, it's very beautiful. So they still do church here, probably every Sunday, if not more than that. There's a lot going on here. Here's a beautiful thing there. And they have stained glass above. So the story gets really exciting when we realize that they got here around 70 AD. So the apostles, Jason and Sosipater, they arrived here around 70 AD. They came to this place. It wasn't this exact church, but they had a church here. Now they say that this church was built in about 1000 AD on top of the ruins of the old church where Sosipater and Jason came to exactly. So this is exactly where they landed, and they started the church here. Now they say that Apostle Jason was the first Christian to ever step foot on the island of Corfu. Wow. Now that thing's lit up pretty good this way. So they say the king took his daughter, and the word they use is put her with an Ethiopian to be corrupted. So he thought that if he put her with the Ethiopian that she would be destroyed in a way. However, what happened was this Ethiopian converted to Christianity himself. He supported Kerkyra, the king's daughter, and then he was killed for his faith. Wow. So the king, even madder than before, he takes Sosipater and Jason and throws them into a cauldron of tar and pitch, lights it on fire. He's getting it boiling and he throws them both in there. Now some accounts say that Jason, he got out of there unscathed, while others believe that Sosipater, he crumbled, died in the cauldron. Now, you know, there's many different accounts. Some say they both lived. So we're now starting to see how these events planted Christianity deep into the island of Corfu, which is also named Kerkyra, after the daughter of the king who was killed for her faith. Let's continue this story over to the early Christian church, as they called it. So we've made it to the oldest church here on the island of Corfu. Now it's closed and it's quite busy here on the street, so it's a little bit difficult to film here. However, it still stands in impressive ruins. Now this building has been destroyed many times in the 600s by the Goths and Vandals. It was destroyed in the 1100s by the Normans, as well as in the 1500s by the Ottoman Empire. Check that out, built in around 400 AD. So it's been rebuilt many times and it sure could be rebuilt again. I think that time's coming. However, they just look at it like this is its value right now. There's a lot of history on the island. So while we're at it, let's go check out the Temple of Artemis, built in the year 600 BC. Here we're at the Temple of Artemis, which is basically just a bunch of foundational stones left in the ground from 600 BC. I guess this is what happens when your God is no longer followed. It ends up like this. So maybe we should get that other church rebuilt. Get the Christians in there. However, you know, God says the temple is in the heart of the believer. But that's cool, huh? A little history just a couple blocks away. Now, this is the central hub of the ancient city, the Paleopolis. Now, the Paleopolis is on this little peninsula, so it's very small and couldn't have held that many people. They say this place has been inhabited since Paleolithic times. So basically as far back as anyone can remember, there's been people living here, especially in this southern peninsula. Let's take a look at the map over here and I'll show you what I'm talking about in regards to that. So we see this is what it used to look like, they believe. And here is the southern peninsula. So this kind of looks big on this map, but it's really not all that big. They had a wall here and that protected this small area during the very early times before about the year 0. Then they slowly spread up, and we're gonna go check out the old fort now up there. So that actually defended this area during the takeover by the Ottoman Empire. So here we are at the old fort in Corfu, also the city of Kerkyra, named after the daughter of the ruler Herculius. His daughter converted to Christianity and was persecuted for her faith. Now what's really cool is that first church that we went to, the church of Jason and also Sosipater, that church served as a refuge for many leaders who fled Constantinople when it was invaded by the Ottoman Empire. Now here we are in Corfu, island off of Greece. All of Greece was taken over except for this island just about. Now one of the main reasons that it held was this huge fort, which they call the Old Fort. So this fort here was used to defend the Ottoman Empire from getting in here. So that land over there, that's Greece and also Albania. So just here is where the edge of the Ottoman Empire spread, and they prevented the invasion. Now this area was also ruled by the Venetians, and they kind of paid for this fort to continue to be fortified. Now let's look at the map and see that Corfu is actually a highly defensive position, a position you need to hold in order to keep enemies from invading the Adriatic Sea. People from Venice say that this city looks so much like their city. It's because it was ruled by the Venetians and they modeled their houses Venetian and also Byzantine. So check it out now. They don't have the canals, but they do have streets paved in marble. So check that out too. Thank you all for coming on this adventure with me, checking out the first church that was built and still is standing, as well as checking out the first church services have been going on there for over 1,000 years. Check it out here in Kerkyra or Corfu, Greece. Woo.